There are cities where loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being surrounded, from constant motion, constant noise, constant proximity, from never being physically isolated and yet never truly being noticed. If you've ever walked through a crowd and felt strangely absent, like you could vanish without disrupting anything, you already know this feeling. Cities like Tokyo and Hong Kong are often presented as marvels, efficient, advanced, perfectly tuned machines, and in many ways, they are. But there's a side to them that doesn't show up in travel videos or skyline photos. A psychological cost that doesn't arrive all at once. It builds slowly, quietly, until one day it just feels like the baseline. What makes this hard to see is that nothing appears broken. Trains arrive on time, streets are clean, systems work. From the outside, these cities look like success stories. But no one lives on the outside. You live inside your nervous system. And that's where the strain starts to show. The human brain wasn't designed for this scale. It evolved around small groups, repeated faces, familiar rhythms. Places where recognition wasn't optional, it was constant. You knew where you stood because people knew you. Not deeply, just enough. Enough to feel real. Now imagine the opposite. Waking up every day as one of millions. Entering elevators where no one speaks. Passing hundreds of faces that never quite register as human long enough to matter. Not because people are cold, but because the volume is too high. So the brain does what it always does under overload. It filters, it numbs, it stops reaching. In Tokyo, this adaptation is almost invisible because it's so disciplined. People follow the rules. They keep their distance. They don't intrude. A train car at rush hour can be completely silent, packed with bodies, eyes fixed anywhere but on each other. It feels calm, but calm isn't the same as ease. What you're hearing is restraint. Live inside that long enough, and you start doing the same thing internally. You keep your emotions narrow. You compress your reactions. You learn that taking up too much space, physically or emotionally, creates friction. And friction is the one thing these cities are engineered to remove. Hong Kong expresses this pressure differently, but the effect is similar. Density isn't horizontal, it's vertical. Apartments stacked higher and tighter, homes shrinking as populations grow. Some spaces are barely large enough to lie down without touching something. When personal space disappears, psychological safety goes with it. There's no buffer, no transition between stress and rest. Whatever follows you home has nowhere else to go. And when there's no physical escape, people look for psychological ones. Burnout here doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look like collapse or crisis. It looks like flattening, like waking up and feeling neutral about everything, like doing what's required without feeling connected to it. People still show up. They still perform. That's why it's so easy to miss. This kind of burnout is rewarded. Endurance is praised. Pushing through is admired. Slowing down feels irresponsible. And in places where competition is built into daily life, jobs, housing, education, there's always someone ready to replace you if you hesitate. So people don't ask how they're doing. They already know the answer won't change anything. Over time, expectations shrink. Fulfillment feels unrealistic. Stability becomes the goal. And even that starts to feel conditional. Loneliness in this environment isn't about a lack of people. It's about a lack of resonance. No mirroring. No sense that your internal state registers anywhere outside your own head. When every interaction is brief, transactional, or interchangeable, nothing sticks long enough to feel grounding. You start noticing it in small ways, eating alone more often, avoiding eye contact without thinking about it, filling silence with screens because silence feels heavier when it's shared with strangers. Your world doesn't collapse, it contracts, quietly. At a certain point, withdrawal stops feeling like a problem and starts feeling like a solution. If engagement costs too much, you reduce exposure. If connection feels risky or draining, you limit it. This is how people begin disappearing without leaving. In Japan, this withdrawal has a name, hikikomori. It's often framed as dysfunction or refusal. But when you listen closely to the stories, a different pattern appears. Many didn't retreat because they rejected society. They retreated because they tried to survive it. They met expectations. They absorbed pressure. And eventually their nervous systems shut the door. So they reduce their world to something controllable. A single room, a predictable routine. It isn't freedom, it's containment. Once you understand the conditions, the response stops looking strange. When participation requires constant self-suppression, invisibility feels safer than exposure. Silence feels safer than judgment. Withdrawal feels safer than failing publicly. Most people don't withdraw completely. They do it partially, emotionally, socially. They learn how to function without fully being present. It's a quieter disappearance, and it's far more common than anyone wants to admit. The city doesn't register this because the system never slows down. Productivity doesn't drop. Infrastructure holds. Everything keeps working, which creates a dangerous illusion. If the system is fine, the people must be too. But systems don't feel anything. People do. One of the most corrosive effects of living like this is that struggle becomes personal. If you're not okay, it feels like your fault. Everyone else seems to be managing. Everyone else keeps moving. So the problem must be you. This belief keeps people quiet. It keeps them isolated inside their own experience. The truth is, these cities are extremely good at what they were designed to do. They move people efficiently. They maximize output. They reduce unpredictability. They eliminate friction wherever possible. What they don't do is protect the emotional limits of human beings. There's no room for vulnerability in systems optimized for speed. No space for unstructured connection. No margin for recovery. Those things are inefficient. So the cost gets absorbed privately, one person at a time. Eventually, loneliness stops feeling like a warning sign and starts feeling normal. Something you live with, like traffic or rent prices. You adjust. You cope. You tell yourself this is adulthood. This is modern life. But that normalization is the real danger. These cities didn't make people weak. They made certain needs inconvenient. They taught people how to function without being seen. And once you understand that, loneliness stops feeling like a personal failure. It starts feeling like information, a signal that something human is being asked to operate in a system that doesn't fully recognize it. The tragedy isn't that so many people feel alone in the most crowded cities on Earth. It's that so many have learned to live that way quietly, without language for it, without resistance, without anyone noticing. And if any of this feels familiar, it's probably because it isn't limited to those cities anymore. Tokyo and Hong Kong just show the pattern more clearly than most. They aren't warnings because of their skylines or technology. They're warnings because they reveal what happens when efficiency wins, and no one asks what disappears along the way.